Hi there everyone, welcome to another stream. And in this stream we're gonna continue, well, we're gonna start something new, but continue the same idea, is to learn how to use SPUC in your projects. So I'm gonna actually create a new scene here in a little bit, so I'll create a folder. I'll just call it a new game. Do you guys have any suggestions for a type of game you want me to create? You want me to show how to create in this video? I'm gonna keep it real general right now, but if you have any suggestions, we can try out some of your guys' idea. Create a scene. Streaming, we're good. Anyone has any suggestions for a game? I'm from India. Hello. Okay, so since anyone, no one has any suggestion, so the game that I'm gonna try to create is gonna be, let's start with a cube. That's gonna be our ground. Move the cube down. Let's scale by 120 by 20. Not in the Y. Okay, never mind. 20 by 20. And I will change the camera angle a little bit in X to be looking down and pick up the camera. Something like that. My player is going to be a sphere. Let's call it player. Player. And I have some materials, I think, that I've created here. Let's see if I can ingress material. Layer, ground. Let's just use that. For my player, I will use a green material. Can you make a similar game to Age of Empires? Well, I can, but it's not gonna be enough time in to make it today in a live stream, and I try to keep my live streams short, like 2 hours max. 1 to 2 hours. So something like that, I guess. But okay, so that's gonna be my player, and I'll add a script machine for my player. Let's use an embedded graph. I get questions a lot asking when to use an embedded graph or when to use a regular graph. If you can use graphs, you better off using graphs almost everywhere. Embedded is just it makes it quicker in terms of prototyping, meaning that if you have a game object in your scene, then you can get access to all of the variables or all of the objects in your scene. If you use a graph, you won't be able to get access to these objects unless you create a object variable and connect them that way. So that's why for tutorials, I actually try to say good, your channel is working hardware. A thought for a future to create Age of Empires. Yep, that's a pretty big thought. Thanks for stopping by. Not hacker. So for tutorials, that's why I end up using embedded, so that I can avoid those extra connections. But I think I'm gonna have to stop using embedded for my tutorials, because a lot of problems. Well, it's the same issue that people run into is when I'm using embedded in my tutorials, but if you switch to use a graph instead of a embedded, then you can't connect some of the things, like find main camera connected that will, or because if I do embedded graph and I want to do something like let's find, like for instance, find transform. And see transform get set parent, and then in here, if I look for a transform that I want to set, I can see those scene objects right here, and I can say like main camera or something like that. But if you switch this to a graph, convert it. So I'm gonna actually create a player. Let's go to SPUC, game templates, a new game. And this can be my player. If you use a graph, then the main camera that I have selected there, you can't actually find it here. It's only allowing me to access the assets. And currently there's no assets with the main camera, so you have to use something else. And the best solution, I mean, you can use find and stuff like that. If it's just used like once or twice in the game, is fine. We want to use find game object, what I'm talking about. So find a game object. It's actually game object find. So using this unit, and you can specify the name of the game object, like for instance, main camera. Use it like that. If you're just using it once, then sure, that might be fine. The only problem with this setup is that if you ever change the name of your camera, then you have to go and find a place where you use that name to change it here as well. But the better approach is actually having a variable. So for instance, camera, a variable camera here, and having it a game object and connecting the camera in your scene. That way you have access to that variable here, and you can just use that like that. So that's the biggest thing to know about using embedded versus graph. So if you use an embedded, you have access to the game objects in your scene. If you use graphs, then you have to use something like that, either variables for your connections to the scene, or you have to find it. Sometimes you can't avoid using the game object find because you have no access to the scene when you start. For instance, if you spawn some object that needs a reference to some other object inside of your scene, then you have to use the find and somehow establish that connection during the runtime. So game object find is something that you would use for that. Unless unless you have that object being accessed more than one time, then you might as well just go to scene variables and add a scene variable for it. So scene, add a scene variable. For instance, the camera is actually one good example for that. So for camera, you can actually use a scene variable there. And the scene variables are basically under the scene variable. You create the variables here. Those are considered the scene variables. And you can drag that. Okay, I guess I have to select here, game object, and you can drag that main camera. And now anywhere in this scene, you can actually use that scene variable. So you don't have to create that camera for multiple objects in the scene. Since we're on topic about since we are in the topic of variables, the next I'm gonna actually mention something about the application variable. So the application variable is something I've used it in my tutorials, but I think I didn't actually use it appropriately. Technically, the application variables are if you have objects that are like you specified that they shouldn't be destroyed. When you switch scenes, then you can use those as an application variables, because the point of application variables is to have the connection to that game object or the float or whatever you're storing there between the scene changes. So if you change during the gameplay, if you change the scene, the application variable will still be available for you. So if you're using like some kind of state of the game and trying to save which page to go back when the player goes back or something like that, that's what that applications variable is for. But for something like camera or like an inventory game object or something like that, you want to use the scene variable because that's where that's connected to the scene, not the application variable. Okay, so that's just some clearing up on the variables. Okay, now that we got sorted out with the variables, let's see what we have in the chat. Okay, can you empires? Okay. Hello. When are you gonna show your face? I'm not sure. It's just showing your face just creates extra work on editing and camera setup and all of that. So currently I'm just trying to avoid extra work, adding extra work for myself to just focus on the content and just do that for now. But maybe in the future I'll end up doing that, but that's what it is for now. I used to watch your videos. Okay, that's good, bro. Keep working to your goal. And learn about Bolt. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. Yes, I'd have a lot of beginner level tutorials on Bolt, and I'm kind of currently at the point where I'm kind of thinking that I should step it up a little bit and go to the next level with Bolt and start making more advanced tutorials and more complicated. It's just the more advanced tutorials take a little bit longer in time to create, and the videos turn out to be longer because the topic is more, I guess, specific, and the setups are a little bit more complicated. But yes, that's what I'm actually kind of realizing that I should start doing that. Due to your post, I am applying for a Bold Game Jam. Yes, I saw that that it's not actually the official Unity Bolt Game Jam. It was the community game jam. And there was 6 entries, I think. I think it was 6 games that were entered for that. So that's yeah. Usually the community game jams, unless they're marketed pretty well, they're pretty small. But I don't know if Unity Bold Game Jams can be official. The official Bold Game Jams can be this year or not. Have to wait and see for that. New to your okay, I can't understand why are you using variables? For what? Using variables for what? Can you explain the reason and behind each a bit of code so that it's easier to learn? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Can you explain the reasoning and relation behind each bit of code so it's easier to use? For the game that I'm creating, I do try to explain like the reasoning and stuff like that, but I mean, you can go in more details, but sometimes I feel like I go a bit too much in details, and it for tutorial that would take 5 minutes to view. It grows up to 10 minutes because of all the information, extra information that I provide. It is helpful for someone that's just starting, but for someone that has already done similar things, it kind of gets I think it kind of gets annoying. So some tutorials are more detailed and some others are less detailed. I guess that's how my videos turn out to be. Good for high score. To do high score, can you use application variables? Depends. If you want to save the high score just for if you want to just save the score just during the gameplay, so if you just want to, because it says right here the variables are shared across scenes, so if you have multiple scenes, that is an option actually in Unity to have more than one scene at a time. So that's where you can actually use it to have a link between the scenes. Or if you load the next scene the variables are going to be there until you restart or quit the application. So reset once you quit the application. So if you're fine with losing the high score after you restart the application, then yeah, you can use the application variables. If you actually want to save, oh, there's some tests right here. If you actually want to save your high score, then you want to step it up and use the saved variables, and the saved variables are actually the ones that are going to be persistent with game loads. Need more help more hyper casual games, tutorials like making a trending game mechanics. So Derek, do you have any suggestion for a mechanic that you want to see being created? You can tell me a mechanic that you want to see, and I'll see if I can incorporate it into this video. So here is my okay, I get it. Okay, good. So here is my player script, and for the player script, is it possible to do everything you do with C#, or are there any limitations? So yes, there are limitations to what you can do with Bolt. Most people say that there aren't limitations, and you can do whatever you can in C# with Bolt, but in truth, there are limitations with what you can do with Bolt. So for instance, if you need to do multi-threading in Bolt in your game, then it's actually currently not possible. I don't know if they're going to be adding that feature in, but currently it's not possible. So it's more like advanced topics that you will be getting into this this problem of C# versus Bolt. So something like multi-threading, if you need to actually have communication with your data server or something like that to pull some information in, you need to actually use some C# so that you won't be blocking your main thread, because you want to do the communication on a separate thread. And with that, like, so with multi-threading, there's things like multiplayer. So multiplayer, if you're trying to create your own multiplayer, then yes, you will need to use C#. If you're using someone else's multiplayer, for instance, if I did tutorials on Photon, how to use Photon. The reason why I chose to use Photon is because of the setup that it had. I still had to do some of C# scripts that would allow you to make some communications, passing variables between players. So basically a conversion of Photon, how the Photon set up to Bolt. So the Photon actually package was easier to convert, but something like Mirror, which is the free I guess version. I mean, you have to host your own server to run it or something like that, but Mirror is actually a little bit harder to use with Bolt because of the I forgot what it's called. Oh, just full it out. Basically some C# ways you use to create the connections, and I can't remember what it's called, but so there's a reason why I have not used Mirror for the connections for that. Plus Mirror uses their own instead of using mono behavior, they extend their own class, which is network behavior or something like that. So just, yeah, but for simple stuff like hyper casual games, or if you're just prototyping, I mean, Bolt is actually pretty good. And to even start learning Unity, if you're scared to jump into code right away and being discouraged of making games, then again, Visual Scripting or Bolt is pretty good for that. You can mix Visual Scripting and C#. So if you prefer Visual Scripting, you can use that for most of the stuff, but then for things that you actually need some code, then you can use the code for that. And yeah, sometimes, like for instance, for state machines, I have not actually made that much tutorials about state machines, so maybe that's one of the topics that I should cover, because it is a little bit more time consuming to actually set up a tutorial for a state machine, because all the different components that go into it, but that is an option for that. Thanks for answering. Yes, when will 2020 LTS version launch? 2020 LTS. I thought 2020 LTS was out already. Installs. Yeah, the 2020 LTS version is out. It's actually 2020.3. They made the LTS version 0.3. So right here, I do have it installed. And so usually the LTS version was 0.4. But for 2020, they actually made the 0.3 version as their LTS. So it's been out for the same time that they released 2021.1. The LTS version of 2020 was it. So it was beginning of this year, I think, or the end of the last year. Like I tried multiple mechanics like join clash, but it's not working with kinematic objects. Join clash, let me see what that is. Okay, so using that, okay, I'm gonna check out what join clash is about. Okay, so something like that. Yeah, we can I guess look at making something like that. Taking a talking of tutorials. This is only a few tutorials about Visual. That is only a few tutorials about Visual Scripting and ads for mobile Android, and I think it's yours, but it's outdated. Yeah, I need to take a look at the ads. I mean, the idea, that one I think I did like 10 months ago, I think. So there are probably changes, but the idea still should be the same. I mean, I think after that, Unity redid their dashboard, so it's different in the dashboard. But yeah, I have to revisit that. Same thing with publishing, although I still get a lot of good comments from the publishing with Android, but that one is also outdated because of not the Unity side, but the Android side, actually Google console side. Okay, so what else? Can you make another one? So yeah, I'll have to take a look at the ads. This is actually one of the tutorials on my list to do. Thanks for the answer. Okay, you're welcome. Please make a game when our character will touch two box and it will change the color, and we have matched the color you touch other. I'm trying to wrap my head. Please, it's my request. I'll come back to that. Hey dude, I have a question. Recently I have tried to put my game in Google Play, but they have terminated my account due to privacy policy, but there wasn't any problem on my game. What to do to avoid this? They terminated your account because of privacy policy? I mean, they can take down your game because of privacy policy, but I haven't heard that they will. Yes, SPUC is one-time payment. It's not a subscription, so just. Yeah, I mean, I would like to make the project free, but just to at least get something back from the time that I actually put into it. That's why I made it one-time payment. Yeah, they did not take my game and close my account. Yeah, if they did something like that, that means there was some other. It wasn't just privacy policy that you were missing privacy policy, but because you were doing something in your game that wasn't actually allowed. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. Making it go like in Buildbox. No, I'm actually I'm done with Buildbox. Not planning to. One of the main problems I've encountered using Bolt is less online documentation than in C#, so I think the video you make can become a reference for anyone who wants to use a Bolt. Keep it up. Yes, the documentations, since Unity took over, they are trying to improve the documentation, but it's going to take a while before it's going to be at the level of the Unity documentation. And plus, most of the documentation that you have for the units, so for instance, transform, right? You use transform, and we can actually, well, let's actually expose transform, and I want to expose it. So, right, you have a transform object that you use, and technically it's its own thing. It's Bolt, but if you look at the C# documentation, you'll find all of these the options that you see here. You'll find them in the C# documentation. So you can actually use the C# documentation to look at the options that we have in Bolt or Visual Scripting, and they will actually give you enough information to understand what it's for and what's used for. There are some units that are specifically for for Bolt, and those units, they actually do have, as far as I remember, they have most of those units are actually documented. So you can find, for instance, variables, how to use variables. There's documentation about that. Then you have what else? The events. So the trigger custom events and custom events, you have documentations about that as well. So the units that are specific to Bolt, they actually have documentations for the most of them at least. Okay, so let's go, because we're gonna have a lot. Okay, sorry. Okay, for the bowl, let's actually look at the. See, I have questions recently. Tried. Okay. Please make a game where when our character will touch toolbox, character touch toolbox, and it will change color. And we have matched the color. You touch another box in build box. Yeah, that someone's requesting to make something in build box. Yeah, I'm done with build box, so I'm just focusing on Unity right now and just doing that. I was thinking of getting back to it, but ever since the changes with the build box, I think it's wise to just stay away from it. Okay, so I want to actually use a touch move. Again, so I'm going to be using, let's go to units, all units. I'm going to be using the SPUC. If that's the whole idea of these videos, the classes, to actually try to use the SPUC to actually create games, to show and to demonstrate the usage of them. So I want to use actually touch move unit, touch scale, touch move. That is right here to move my my circle around, and then I'll be using an if collide to listen for collision with enemies, and listen for collision with items that I actually want to collect to win the game. So let's get started. Add a touch move. So this is a graph. So what I'm gonna do is switch to one of my layouts, and it is live added. So I have this layout that I can use for making the game, making the logic once the game is actually live. That's a pretty cool option that we have here with Visual Scripting. Make a game like in so you can if you're looking for something like that, you can look at the tutorials that I have. I'm pretty sure there's some mechanics that you can reuse from the tutorials that I have on BuildBox to help you out with that. But okay, so I will add a touch move, and that should get me the ability of moving at that ball. Now I want to actually move it not in the Y direction, but in the Z. So something like that. That looks pretty good. It's not following the mouse directly, but I did that on purpose, and I will actually show how to go inside here and use the existing logic to try to get the same logic but to work with the exact mouse follow, and the idea that I had for for how to actually use the SPUC as a starting point, and then you can modify the units to what you're looking for and have it work like that. Okay, so that's a touch move right there. And now I want to actually create some, that's pretty much it. So I'll create if collide, and I will be looking for enemy. Currently I don't have enemies in the game, but I'll just create the logic off the bat for it. So enemies, and if I enter the enemy, I'll restart the scene, and it's gonna start from the beginning, but then I'll duplicate another one, and this is going to be my, let's just call it point. I think I have a point. If I collide with a point, then I want to add point, or let's do add score. So add score, I'll add 1 point, and I'll be adding to current and total, and that's pretty much it for here. The add point does exactly the same thing. It's just one the option that I had before. I added the add score. So in the back, if we take a look inside here, it's exactly doing that. It's just using the add score here. But if you want to have more control, you can use this. So add score. And I think that's pretty much it for now. Let's exit the live edit. And for my player, I want to add a rigid body. Rigid body, so that the ball actually would drop down. And we will add some enemies now. My game templates. New game. So for enemies, what I'm thinking is to create, let's just do stationary for now, but then we'll see if we want to actually start moving an enemy. I'll select a tag. Pretty important to use tags for collisions. If you want to filter out the collisions later on, just use tags. It will save you a lot of time. And for enemy, I'll just use an enemy material. Let's position the enemy. I'll put the plane on the ground to 1 so that anything that the place at 0 is going to be on the ground. So that's going to be my enemy. Now let's add another one somewhere here and another one somewhere there. Now let's add a point. So for point, let's actually use a cylinder for a point. So I'm going to decrease the scale to 0.5, I think. Let's make it smaller, 0.3. So it's going to be a little bit above the surface, and 0.8 in the other directions. 0.5. 0.5 is too small, let's do 0.7. Ready, so this is going to be my point. And also put a tag for that. That's a point. And although it looks like a coin, but it's a point. And I'll use a point material. Now for the UI, I'll add a text. Although they do recommend using Text Mesh Pro for your games because it has a little bit more better performance for mobile games. So that Text Mesh Pro is it's the new text asset, but I'll just use text for now, because Text Mesh Pro is going to actually import another package in, as far as I know. So text, this is going to be my points. My points, and we can actually say 0, but then I need to bring up my game window. Control 1, I could have used that, to see where my points are at. So let me center it first. I'll center it. I do like to switch from constant pixel size to scale with the screen size. That way I have control over the size of the points. So this is something that you do often, I guess. At the top, 200 is too big, 100 is too big, 50. That looks pretty decent, I guess. Move it down a little bit, and we can actually change a color to white. I think it'd be fine. And for points, yeah, let's just use a script machine. I do have a graph that I can use for it, but let me actually I'll just use an embedded one for here. Later on, you can always convert your embedded graphs into regular graphs if you want to start reusing them. But to start, we can just use that. And there is some UI, so you can look for UI, and there's some units that I have here. So UI coins, UI score, UI button, and UI points. UI points and UI coins, there are just a configuration of UI score. So if you want to actually have more control, you can do that. Use UI score. And in here, I actually want to show the current. The default one, the UI points, actually shows total, but I want to actually show the current only. I don't want to show the total. So these we don't need. And inside here we have all the logic that is needed for it to actually change and everything like that. whenever we change in our game, change the points in our game. So something like this, you probably have seen me do like a lot, I guess. It's nothing complicated, but let's actually make it so you actually need to collect all the coins, and I'll show a setup how you can actually do that, how you can collect all the coins. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but I'll just try to show a couple. So something like that, real simple. Probably can change the angle of the camera a little bit more to have it more centered and stuff. But let's just try it out. So now if I move, okay, the sensitivity of movement is really weak. So we can go to player, added graph, and in here I can actually increase the sensitivity. The reason why it became weak is because I converted the canvas. I think that it's connected with the scale width, and because I changed that, it looks like the movement changed with it as well. So let's see. Okay, so there we have a restart. Whenever restarts in the editor, actually not calculating the correct lighting. So if you export it, it does fixes it. But if you want to, see it pretty in the editor as well, you have to go to the lighting settings and actually use one of the lighting settings, or create a new one if you don't have it. And after that, I think you don't have to actually run it, but after that should the light should be baked, and whenever you restart it should use the lighting is working now. Okay, so for the player, I think I needed to increase a little bit more, but you could have also seen that rolling effect, or like it's still, the ball still moved after I released it. And the reason is because I have rotation on, and when I move the ball around, the friction causes the ball to rotate. So if you turn off the if you freeze the rotation, that problem should go away. Okay, now, so if I collect that coin, well, not really collecting it, but if I hit the coin, I get that point. So to collect it, all you have to do is actually remove it after you get the point, or yeah. So after you get the point, let's just remove. And we can get the object from the if collide. I think it'd be cleaner to change the order here. Enter, remove, and after we remove, add a score. So now if I hit that coin, I should get that point, and it disappears. Now I want to display a win message after I collect all those coins. Now this logic, there's different ways of doing it. So either you have a setting in your scene or in your level to say how much points you need to actually collect to win, if you want to do that. But if you are actually just looking for collecting all the points, you can also use, since we do have a tag, we're using tag, you can use the tag to find and count all of the objects that are in the game. So you can do find by tag or with tag. I don't remember which one it is. Tag, find with tag, game object find with tag, and we're looking for tag point. Oops, I double clicked on that. So point, and then I'm excellent. Select find with tag, but actually you can use that. You can use find with tag. You can also use find with tag, except use another one. Use the find game objects with tag. One is going to return, so this one is going to return just a game object, one game object, but this one is going to actually return all of the game objects. So it's a list, and here you can actually count the items, and you can see how much items, how much of the points you still have left to collect. So if you want to count down the points that you still need to find, this is an option you can use. But I'm just going to use a simple version, so just find with tag if a point tag exists. And I want to do a check right here. So for things like for things that are common, like touch, move, if, collide, and stuff like that, the use of SPUC is pretty good. So you just have things that commonly are done to create. But for things that are more specific to a game type, for instance, counting how much points are left, or deciding if you've collected all the points or not, there's different implementations of how you can do it. So how you actually place the points, or if the points are in different scenes, or if the points are actually in different parts and stuff like that. So that you can't really do a unit without providing like instructions how you need to set up your game. So it's basically like you're forcing a person to just do a game specifically. What is SPUC? SPUC is the collection of the units that I have. So if you take a look at here, these units right here, I do have some units in here that I've listed, just the ones that are come with Bolt or Unity Visual Scripting. But these units that I've created, so the touch is touch, to four-way swipe, and position limiter, jump. Also, all of these units, I have a random vector 3 that is coming up in the next release. So all these units, they help you out with this, just doing the common tasks that you do. Okay, but I was saying, so for things like this, there's different implementations how you can create your game, and how you can create levels and stuff like that. So there's, I don't know, I kind of find that there's no point of creating a unit that will be doing that, like counting how much points you still have left. Connect. I guess that's, so to see if we have a point, we can run this, and then in here we can actually do a null check. And a null check is going to check if if there is an object. So if no game object was found with points, we're gonna get a null. If there was a game object found, then we're gonna get a not a null. So that's just a check that we can do to find out if we still have points to collect. So if it's null, that means we are done collecting, and that's when we can actually display our UI. So UIs. Now let's get into UIs. There is a UI show, I think, or a show, I think UI. Show and hide UI. So I have this unit. And basically here you can specify the UI name that you want to show. Currently I have nothing configured for UI. So let's say that I want to create a UI with, I guess, let's call it uWin. That's going to be our UI game object that we're going to display. So if we collect all the points, I want to display uWin. So let's go ahead and create a uWin in Canvas. So I'll duplicate points so that I keep the configurations of the text. uWin, and then I can but change the position to be in center. And change the text to uWin. Something very simple. 100's too big. Okay, let's try. Wow, okay. I misspelled uWin. Great. So uWin. Okay, and this is where we're going to display. Now, I want to hide this UI for now, but to display this uWin message, you need to have access to this uWin game object. You could try finding it by using game object find, just like we did find tag or find game object. You can try doing that, but it's not going to work because the find is actually not searching for objects that are disabled in Unity. So if the object is disabled, then you can't actually find it. There's several different ways you can do it to I guess to create that, but the approach that I decided to take was to actually have a UI configuration. So if in the place where you have UI, for instance, my canvas is going to be a list of my UIs. Inside here, you can add a script machine and add a graph. Let me close this. And add one of the graph, and it's the UI config or config UI. Now, what that graph does is pretty simple. It just goes through all of the parents or all the child of the parent and enters those into the scene variables. So it just sets up all of these units, or all of these children, and making them available as a variable. So on start, it just goes through and does that. And then in the player, that's where you can use this unit right here to actually find that UI by name, uWin, and it's going to actually pull up that uWin. So it's a two-step. Basically, you have to configure the UI, your UI list. You have to have the configure UI in there, and it's gonna give you access to all of the children inside here, no matter if they're disabled or enabled. That's the approach I decided to take to do that. I have a question. Should I learn C# and Bolt Visual Scripting at the same time to future-proof myself or stick to one. You'll learn faster if you just stick to one of them. So whatever you prefer to start with, you can start with that. But if you start with Visual Scripting or Bolt, then yeah, you can do most of the stuff. But then when you'll need C#, you will have some already plenty of programming knowledge. Not exactly like coding logic, but coding knowledge, but you'll have programming knowledge that will help you out with using C#. Because there's two big, I guess, things that you have to learn to get into the whole game development or any type of development. One, as I see, is the ability of programming. And programming, it's not actually like using some kind of code or something like that, but actually being able to describe how you solve a solution with the options that you have. So actually, like even in programming, it was called like pseudocode. Basically, just in plain English or whatever language you speak, like try to explain how you go about like solving this problem. What's the steps? What you check for, basically in English, not really in like in C# and syntax and stuff like that, but just in plain English. And Bolt, basically, for using the Visual Scripting in Bolt, you still need to learn how to program. And yes, you're using nodes, or you're using a very limited amount of nodes that you have available, units that you have available to create your solution. So sometimes with that you have to create some creativity if you're limited. But with Bolt, you do have low-level units available, so you can actually basically recreate the units from scratch. Bolt is somewhat faster way to get there. Again, it all depends like what's your background knowledge is. If you have no code experience and that will be new, then you'll spend time figuring out the syntax logic and how it all works together, and the whole object-oriented programming and stuff like that. So it might be. See, I have not personally. I have not tried Visual Scripting language before I knew code. So I did learn code before I even got into the whole idea of any of no-code solutions or Visual Scripting. I do have plenty of years of experience in coding. I worked in the industry for over 10 years, so I do have a lot of experience with code. But you can try both. So you can try Bolt and see. I mean, look at C#. Yeah, but I would suggest look at C# first and see if you're getting it. If you feel pretty comfortable, then yeah, just stick with C# and just use that. If you have like, if you're kind of feel that you're confused with what's going on, then try out Bolt. Maybe the whole visual aspect of it, actually seeing the visual connections, stuff like that, maybe it would help you to actually understand the logic, how it works, and how the program runs and stuff like that. So it's just, yeah, for some people just C# will be just pretty much enough to understand. For others, they need some visual reference to get the idea. Okay, so with that, I think we are done. So I did, as far as I remember, did connect them. So I did connect it to check after each point that I collect, to check if we still have more points to collect or not. So let's try this out. We got 1 point, got 2, 3, and we hit the enemy. Okay, let's try again. Get 1 point, 2, 3, 4, but we didn't get you win text. So this is a common thing that you would get into, like you everything looks fine and logical, and you did everything that you thought needs to be done to make it work, but at the end you get a result that you're not looking for. And the solutions, you basically will learn to logically think through where what's going on and what's the cause of it. And the first time you encounter this kind of error or this kind of thing is going to be kind of very frustrating, because like you did everything right, and I can tell you that we did everything right here. Everything is logical and everything is, but there is still a problem. So the problem is actually because of how the remove works. And if you have not encountered this problem before, it will be pretty difficult to actually find a solution at the beginning. So let me see if, come on. Okay, I guess I forgot to remove the script from there. But so now it's actually working fine. But you saw that we had to add a delay there. Let me first remove the script from here, because we don't want to change this score there. So we had to add a delay. And there, the reason for that delay, that I added is how Unity actually removes the units. So inside here, I just used the Unity destroy here, and you could actually, if you want to, you actually can use this instead. There's no difference. Currently, there's no difference. I do want to add a little bit more to the remove. That's why I created it. But for now, the remove is exactly this right here. It's just a destroy, not an exit on enter. But how Unity destroys, when Unity destroys, is actually the last thing. So after the update is done, the update loop is done, then it's gonna actually destroy that game object. So in this flow, if we check if we have no points, then we'll still see it here. By adding a delay, that means we're saying that after this thing finished running, after this update is done, then I just add a little bit delay to actually give time for Unity to actually destroy this game object before I look for the points. So this, I guess this is something that you gotta learn or figure out at one point. But if you're here, then I guess you learned that. Maybe next time you encounter this might come to a solution for you, as a solution. I see what you mean. Thank you for answering my question. You gave me a ton of clarity. I was thinking about that all day yesterday. Happy if I got all. So yeah, I have if got all. So you, like I said, there's different approaches that you can take to actually doing this logic. So I decided to go with finding the points. Each time collect a point, it checks if there's no more points to collect. But again, with this setup, you do have to use the delay because I'm relying on the destroy, and the destroy only happens after the update is done. So that is one of the approaches. But yes, you can also use the if I count if all the points are there. For that, you'll have to store how much points you have in the game. So somewhere you're gonna have to, like in a scene or scene variable or something, somewhere there, you're gonna have to store how much points you actually have in the game. Or another option is actually finding the tags. So you actually use find with tag and finding them right here, counting the items and storing that on start. So doing something like that. So on start, you can create a variable. All points, or something like that, points. And it's going to be an integer. Holding Alt, I can switch it to set instead of get and do something like that. So that will give me points. Point. That's going to give me this variable that I can use. So in here, so instead of using this logic, what I can do is after I add score, then I can say if. And in this if statement, I want to actually check get score. Get score. And want to get current score, current points. Then you would do equals. Check if they do equal, then you can trigger the same logic right there. So if it's true, then show. So that's another approach they can do. So either this is going to count dynamically how much points you have. So it will work if you just have one part and that is loaded right away. This is going to work. But if you're going to be adding more parts throughout the game or some kind of randomization, then you're going to have to switch to either knowing how much points you have, or you're going to have to use the dynamic approach of just seeing if there's any points to collect and stuff like that. So again, there's different ways of approaching it, and let's actually check if that works. So collect 1 point, 2, and 3, and then we got you win text. So that is an option. So you can use one of those options, or you can create another one. But basically, you just have to kind of figure out the logic that you have here. Okay, now what if we were instead of showing you win text, we actually want to continue to the next level? So we have like multiple levels. What can we do? So I already showed that I have a level system built, right? So let's create an empty and say load level. And in here we can use the level controller. So this level controller, I don't know if I mentioned it, but you can use a C# or you can use Bolt or Visual Scripting to create. There's nothing complicated about it, but I just decided to use the C# because of the simpler way of actually adding like levels here and stuff like that. It's just, I'll show you what it is. You can do the same thing, but with the C# is just with Bolt is just you have to create variables from scratch, and you have to know which variables to create. So just because of that, I decided not to use it. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my new game, and inside here I'll create a folder. This can be levels, something like that, and I want to select the points. Enemies, and also I'll move the ground to a level as well. So let's move it to level loader, and inside level loader I'll create an empty game object and just call it level 1. Move that here. Okay, let's make sure that everything disappears. Okay, that's good. So this can be our level 1, and I can actually create a level 1 from right now. But it's always a good idea if you have like things like enemy, ground, and points, something that is gonna exist in multiple levels. You want to create prefabs from that first, so that you have a way to control the base of those classes, of those objects. Prefabs. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll create ground. In case you want to change the material or some kind of configuration for it, you can use that. So I have enemy, ground, and point. And now I need to actually use the prefabs here to create a level. So let's go inside here and create some level, something like that, and then points. Let's add some points. Okay, so that's gonna be my level 1, and the level 1 is created from prefabs. So if I want to change any of the settings for the enemies or points, I can just go to the prefab and modify it there. Can drag that level 1 here and add it. Now in the level loader, I want to drag this level 1 and add it here as well. And you can leave the level 1 here for now if you're working on it. When you load the game, it's actually gonna remove anything that is inside the load level. So be sure to not have anything here that you want to actually keep. Otherwise, it's just gonna remove everything. So this is gonna be level 1. I can duplicate and create a level 2. Let me disable level 1, and now here you can make the ground bigger if you want. You can make more points. Basically, design your level. Make it a little bit more difficult. So that's okay. That's gonna be enough for level 2, and you can see that I have enemies that I've created inside here, and there's a plus here. If you see the plus, that means that these enemies weren't, these objects weren't actually added to the level 2. So if we go inside the level 2, we won't see them. And what you can do is actually go override and apply all. and that's gonna actually add those enemies inside of our level. If you don't want to do the overwrite, you can go to edit prefab. So click that button and it's gonna go to prefab edit here. And then now inside here, if you add any enemies, it's gonna actually be adding it to the level prefab. You know, you don't have to do the overwrite thing. So that's gonna be our level 2, and we can drag and add the level 2 to our level controller. Now in our player, there is a change that we need to do. And it is after we've completed the level, instead of showing you win text, we want to complete the level. So level complete. So passing completed, and here have an option of if you have a next level or not. So if I don't have a next level, then I'm gonna actually display you win. If I do have a next level, I want to load next level. Let's click play, and it should start with level 1, although we have level 2 displayed there. It actually does not remove the levels here, but it does but it just disables them. So now if I could complete this level, let me try to do that. Got all 5 of them, and right away after that delay it loads the next one. And now if I complete this one, let me try to, okay. I really need to get the player to actually follow the mouse. It's gonna be much easier, and I guess we can do that next. So complete the second level and you get the you win message. So like that, you can add more levels and basically make it a lot easier to do that. Okay, so we got 2 levels. Now I want to change my player to actually follow the mouse movement. So I don't have a unit yet for that, and it's fine. It's not always gonna be the case that you'll find something that is going to work exactly for what you're trying to create, but you can use the closest unit that is available to start from there and create another unit using it that will work exactly the way you want. So the unit that is the closest right now is the touch move, and that's what I started with. And now I need to actually improve it so it actually follow the mouse. Before you modify any of these units, unless you want to change this unit everywhere in your game, you can go enter here and start modifying it. But again, this is going to change this unit usage everywhere. So it's actually going to change the file that is used for inside SPUC. So to modify just this unit here, you want to click this convert option. So when you click convert, it's going to convert it to embedded. If you want to store or save this graph separately in your game, you can click convert again, and name it as you want, and that will create a graph, but is going to duplicate the existing graph that SPUC had. So I'm just going to leave it embedded right now, and let's go inside here and see what we are working with. So there is there's some logic here that I check to determine how I want to actually move the position of it. So there's a difference between if you don't have a if you have a rigid body, then you want to use the rigid body position instead of just transform position. So there's lots of different logic that I try to add here to use best practices to get you the better results for what you're trying to do based on the configurations that you have of your game objects. So for moving, you want to use the rigid body set position on a rigid body. And if you don't have a rigid body, then you just use this to transform. Otherwise, it's going to be actually giving you some jittery effects and stuff like that. So that's jittery effects. Yeah, I think it was just, yeah, it was just doing some jittery effects. Please make a code for the latest version of Photon Visual Script with. Maybe it can. Is the previous version of Photon is not working anymore? The bolt conversion that I did. Okay, so you mean the latest version of Visual Scripting is not working on it? Yes, there is a modification that needs to be done to it. That I know, but I'm not sure if Photon changed anything on their side. I'll have to take a look at that one, because it was using Bolt, and since Visual Scripting they modified the namespaces where the whole code for Visual Scripting is, so it just needs to be modified there. Okay, so what I'm doing here right now is using the mouse position, and then I'm using the move speed. So actually using the determine how fast the mouse is moving, and based on that try to move the object accordingly. Now if you want the object to follow the mouse, then you're gonna have to do some ray casting. And we can actually do that. But before we do ray casting here, I want to go to my game object and my scene and do some changes here. So I do have prefabs that I've created, and I have the ground prefab. So this is where the prefabs are benefit. So I want to put the ground on a layer, so it can be easier for me to actually track the position. So I'm going to switch layer to ground from default to ground, and you'll see where that's going to be useful in a little bit. So let's do that. And now we'll have to do some ray casting. Raycast. So camera to ray, screen point to ray. So I want to use that. Just position. So that's going to create me an array. Screen point to array. So in here, I need to actually pass in the screen point. And the screen point is actually just gonna be the mouse position, so right there. So I'm not gonna do any smoothing right now, but basically that is it. Our relationship, we can click relationship to see if we actually are required to use the flow connection or not. So if you see a straight line from the for here, that means we're actually not required to use it. But if you want to cache the array value, then you want to actually connect the flow. After that, we do array cast. Array cast physics. And we're looking for the array and maximum distance and a layer mask. So with that, we will get a result as a boolean, but I actually want to get the location. So let's try it again. Array cast. Array cast. So array physics array cast. There's so much options for array cast in here. So this unit I'm actually going to create and add as well. Can you please make a beats tutorial with the Unity and Blender bolt and Blender and Bolt. Beat Saber. I'll have to take a look at that. So raycast, I want to use array, max this layer, and I need to, okay, hit info, there we go. So our array, hit info, max distance, and layer mask. That's the ones that I need. The hit info is going to give me the information about the camera. You see we need a camera here, and we have the scene variable that we can use for that we created just a little bit. The maximum distance, so let's say 20. I'm not sure how far away. Let's actually say 50. A layer mask, in here I can actually pass in a variable or an integer value, or I can get the layer mask. Layer mask literal, and I want to do ground, so it's just gonna look for raycast with a ground. Again, we could check for relationships, and for this one you can see that there's two lines here. So there's a straight line, so if we just want the boolean value, we don't have to run through this thing. But if we actually want to hit info, in which case we do want, we actually need to run this this flow as well. So it's supposed to be inside of our flow. So all of this logic needs to go into the appropriate place, which is right here on toggle. So whenever we're holding the mouse down, it's going to go inside here, and then the hit info it's going to give us the place where it's actually the point where it's, so we can get actually, let's go expand right cast hit. Inside here we can get the point right there. And for and currently you can see that we are actually using the per second, so it's actually a move speed that I'm using here, and it's adding to the position. I can, if I want to smooth the movement, I can actually use the per second. But I think for now, I'm just going to use the point specifically. So I'm just going to pass in that position value. And that will allow me to remove all of this extra stuff here. Per second, movement, and all of that we're no longer using. And the thing that I have to do after I do the raycast is connect it to this component to figure out which one I'm going to use to change the position. So I have removed the screen X and screen Y. So we're no longer using that. We're also not using move speed, and I can remove those variables from here as well. So move X, remove, and move Y. Smoothness, I think I'll still add it back here, but one thing that I'll have to add here is the layer mask. So let me edit that, and it's going to be layer mask. So when you're creating your variables for your super units, to not have extra spaces in your label, you want to follow this kind of format. I mean, the first one is you can keep it capital or smaller, but I just keep it lowercase. So layer, and then instead of using space, you use uppercase. But at any point, if you want to change how the label looks, you can modify it here. But basically, that will be converted to this by default, so we don't have to actually do that. So make sure we add that in, and this is going to be our layer mask variable. So that will allow us to actually pass in the layer mask instead of using a pre-built one from inside here. So still don't have the smoothness available, but let's test it out. Okay, let me see if I... So for the layer mask, I can pass in a layer mask round. For some reason, it doesn't allow to have a default value for it. So let's actually test this out and see if the ball is going to be following the mouse. And there we go. Our ball is following the mouse exactly, but you can see that it's actually going into the ground because the position is actually 0. So it's following the ground, but it's actually going into the ground. So we need to actually create an offset for our position. And that is one of the options that I'll add to the unit when I'll be adding that to one of the units. So I just showed that as an example of how you can actually like use an existing unit and to convert to something something that you need. Of course, not all the units require deep understanding of what you're trying to do. Though we ended up using just 2-3 more units here to actually create that conversion, but you kind of do need to understand what a camera screen point to ray is, and ray cast and get point. If anyone is interested, I can actually explain what that is. Okay. So yeah, let me just do that, and I think that all of that will be, or I'll be wrapping you up with that with this video. So screen point to ray. What that is basically converts. You have a camera here, and what screen point to ray is basically it determines based on where you click in the screen. It converts to a ray that it shoots into the camera world. So it uses the field of view and all the information that you have here. So most is just field of view to calculate that point that you are trying to click on, and it's shooting from the camera. So if we look at the camera, and right there you can see those lines, those are basically the projection of rays onto the world. And when you do screen point to ray, it basically anywhere you click on that, it actually finds the point, finds the direction and the position, the starting position and the direction of where the ray is going to be shot. So from the camera, it's going to be shot. Like if I click on this coin right there, for instance, it's going to shoot a ray from the camera to this direction. So there's going to be a line going right there. So that's what a screen point to ray is. It creates that ray, and then we do a physics raycast. What physics raycast is, it's using that ray that we just created from screen space, and it tests for a collision. So it shoots a ray and tests if it collides anything. Now we do have a layer mask filter here that filters to collide only with the ground, and also a maximum distance of 50. So if we click outside of this square, or if we move this ground 50 units down, then it will not actually register anything from it. One more thing, so it is possible for there's to be no hit info, and currently I kind of assume that there's always a hit info, and we're gonna get into a problem if we do that. So one thing that we need to add here is an if statement, and only continue with the logic if there is a collision. So use that Boolean value to continue with the logic. If there is no collision, then we want to just ignore, because there isn't a place to move to. that is what the rate cast is, and this get point is straightforward. It's just getting a point from the rate cast info. So that's it. I think that will be it for this video. How long? So we're 10 minutes away from 2 hours. So I think that's about. It shouldn't let me. You can see that it doesn't allow me to actually go outside of this box. Actually, I did right there. Oh, because it. Okay, so see, these sides, it's not actually making allowing me to drop that box, the bowl off. But right here, it actually allows me to drop the bowl off the edge because I'm also colliding. I'm hitting the ray on the side of that. Off that ground, so it actually allows me to roll off. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you for stopping by. I do hope that there is some helpful information in this video, and that I've answered all the questions that you guys had. Okay, I think yes, all of the. Until next time then,